Scrap is the most important resource in the Rust economy. You can buy items from vendors in safe zones and use it to trade with other players. You can research items to craft in the research table or inside the workbench tech tree. Vehicles can also be purchased from the Airwolf, and also submarines or boats from the fishing villages, as well as horses from the barns. The most obvious way to farm scrap is by hitting barrels alongside the roads and inside monuments. The ocean also has junk piles that you can farm relatively safely and then take your haul to a nearby lighthouse or harbor to recycle, which now after a recent update will give you more scrap than if you recycled in a safe zone. An underrated feature within the oceans are the underwater shipwrecks, which can offer tons of loot, and if you bring a combat knife, it makes it much less of a hassle to farm components to recycle this way. Make sure to bring a spear gun though, because the sharks are hungry. If you want to take a route less traveled, then try selling items in vending machines. Most players will throw extra guns in a vending machine and call it a day, but there are so many more things you can do with this. Early game, you could build a base in a quiet part of the map and burn wood in furnaces to sell charcoal, which is a hot commodity due to the time it takes to obtain. You could level this shop up after learning a little industrial to fully automate a raw resource purchase for a refined sale, like selling metal fragments for metal ore, piping it to your furnaces from the vending machine, and then piping the refined resources back into it. The idea behind this tactic is selling refined metal fragments for wood and ore, then selling the charcoal for scrap. Within the same vein of the more relaxed approach is farming. You can buy horses or find them in the wild, feed them pickles, which is a cheap source of food to keep them alive, and turn their poop into compost that you can sell at a vendor for scrap. A more profitable way to handle this, and less boring since you have to wait for the vendor to refresh its stock, is to use that fertilizer to create a hemp farm to sell cloth or a berry farm to sell teas. Many players that aren't a part of a huge clan will rarely get to this point to mass create teas when it actually matters during a wipe, so you can end up making a good chunk of scrap by doing it for them. The most important teas, in my opinion, are the pure max health teas, pure ore teas, and pure wood teas. If you end up with some extra yellow berries and have white berries laying around, then you could also craft pure scrap teas. I don't think it's worth selling these as you're trying to get scrap yourself, so why not pop one and farm a road nearby or hit barrels in the ocean junk piles. It's actually pretty good if you're dedicated enough to farm for the entire duration of it. If you're in a pinch and having trouble getting scrap anywhere due to other players, you can get a small amount from two of the mission providers. The fisherman will give you 100 scrap for farming 100 crude, which isn't much but worth knowing, and the hunter at the barns will give you scrap for all three of his missions. You'll need to be ready to hunt some animals though, which can be difficult to find. 1 boar for 100 scrap, 3 deer for 100, and if you pay them 25 scrap, a treasure chest will spawn within 8 grids of you, containing loot which can sometimes be really good, especially if you get a good amount of tech trash to recycle. Speaking of which, another thing that's good to know is which things you should be recycling. There's way too much to cover since you can recycle certain items for components as well, but the only ones that really matter are items that have a chance to give tech trash. This is currently the entire list which you can find on Rust Labs, and the percent chance for it to give you tech trash when recycled. I myself didn't even know you could get tech trash from telephones. Tech trash is best to recycle for scrap alongside fuses, rifle bodies, SMGs, and semi-bodies. Springs are important to keep because they're hard to find, and you'll want gears for garage doors and armored doors. Pipes and road signs depends on what you want to craft, and sheet metal is okay as well. The tech trash and fuses are the big ones here because there's not too much to craft until late game with tech trash, and you'll also get tons of tech trash from recycling CCTV and computers, which don't have much use early game, and fuses add up faster than you can use them most of the time. If I'm still on tier 1 or partly through tier 2 though, I will most likely be recycling absolutely everything besides what I need for doors and guns. And if you're feeling really crazy or just popping off during a roam, you can also recycle guns for weapon bodies and springs, but you'll probably be better off selling them in a vending machine. The only weapon you'll find me recycling is a nail gun for 12 scrap. Oh, and if you're a psychopath, jackhammers and large backpacks give you scrap for recycling them. I don't think many people know about this one though, because you're an insane person if you do this. Bringing it back to the good old vending machines, I forgot to mention that there are other things which you can sell to vendors, which I use all the time very early game. After recycling your components, you might have some HQM or metal fragments that you can trade for scrap, which adds up very quickly, especially after an underground tunnels run. If you live next to a monument like military tunnels, you might have tons and tons of green cards which you can sell, along with blue and red if you're a psycho. If you're farming compost and growing cloth to sell, you might as well grow some corn while you're at it. And rad pills and crude can be sold, but it's extremely not worth the time in my opinion. You can also sell fish at the fishing village, which has been a staple in Rust for a long time, supporting all the noobs out there. It's just had a rework recently, but if you're a skilled fisherman, you can still make a solid chunk of scrap by selling small sharks and other rare fish, some of which give you scrap for gutting them if you're doing so for food and animal fat anyway. Supply drops are the crate type that gives the most scrap at 140 to 159-ish per supply drop. You can find these in other crates. One randomly drops around once an hour, or if you're very dedicated and have tons of diesel, you can farm them at Giant Excavator at 1 supply drop from every 5 diesel used. There's only a 33% chance the supply drop has this scrap though, which is why other crates are more reliable. Every other crate type has a 100% chance to give a small amount of scrap, with the elite crate being the most at 25 scrap, so it's kind of bad to farm crates for scrap unless you intend to recycle mostly everything else that you get from them. Another out-of-the-box method to farming crates are these wagons that you find on train tracks, which you can empty at the train yard with a green card. The military crates that can spawn in them have a 1% higher chance for tech trash and rifle bodies, and also give slightly more scrap. These are harder to find than most other things on this list, but if you're out collecting a ton of wagons for resources, it can be a good thing to look out for when roaming. Also, something to note is that military scientists have a 36% chance to drop 8 to 33 scrap, and regular scientists have a 24% chance to drop 8 to 22. Recently, the metal detector was added, which is basically a mini game that you can do anywhere for a chance at a selection of items, including scrap. You'll get 7 to 13 scrap at a 16% chance per flag, and the only other notable item would be 4 to 5 road signs at an 83% chance per flag. You'll also have a chance to get springs and metal blades for recycling if you wanted to do that. The junkyard is a very underrated form of farming scrap. There's a scrapper in the center with a magnet crane that you can pick up vehicles with to scrap. The junkyard spawns beaten up pickup trucks that give you 100 scrap and some metal fragments, but if you spend the time to gather up a few vehicles, then this is where you can make the big bucks. A 4 module chassis will give you 125 scrap, 3 mod gives 125, and a 2 mod gives 75, as well as a snowmobile giving 50. And if you scrap them with whatever modules they spawned with, you'll also get a bit of wood, metal, and HQM on top of that. This can be an extremely easy way to farm 1,000 scrap super quickly with some vehicles you've had laying around in your garage. And then there's gambling. There's either a bandit camp or a combined bandit outpost, which offers multiple forms of gambling, poker with other players, slot machines, a roulette wheel, and blackjack. Obviously, I'm a gambling legend considering my most popular video is about the roulette wheel, but I'd have to recommend blackjack if you're planning on losing a ton of scrap. The way I play Rust has me too busy with other things, so I mostly use blackjack as a form of not having to go around and hit a few road signs or barrels on the road outside outpost, because if I bust this all in on a 50-50, then did I really need that extra jackhammer or minicopter? Probably not. So you won't find me gambling too much outside dropping an extra 400 scrap that I had on a one-time all-in. That covers everything besides which monuments are the best to farm, and on that topic, I'd have to say Underwater Labs is number 1, Underground Tunnels is number 2, Ocean Junk Piles at 3, the barrels outside launch site and the rocket crates at 4, pretty much any blue card and red card puzzle at 5, junk piles on dirt roads with lots of intersections with the main road at 6, monuments like airfield and water treatment which have tons of crates outside the puzzle at 7 because they're looted most of the time, dome at 8 because it's always looted but fun to camp for road farmers, a bag near a tier 1 monument like lighthouse or mining outpost at 9 for a quick spawn in and recycle or F1 if it's empty, and at 10 probably just having a bag near a huge line of zip lines to spawn into, or a very long road and running it for only crates. That's all I got for you guys today. Leave a like if you enjoyed the video, leave a dislike if you didn't, and I'll catch you in the next one.